Hello, so it's Katrina Russell again. I hope you're all staying safe and healthy. I wanted to talk about kind of a touchy subject. So, I have a friend who posted something, I'm going to be very vague, but posted something um, about people making comments about others who don't have kids and how people shouldn't do that because they don't know the situation. They don't know if they've been trying, they don't know if they've been miscarrying, they don't know if they're just sterile, they don't know the situation. And I said how I agreed, how before I had kids I used to hate the question because I wanted kids. I hadn't met the right person, or there was time when I was married and I was trying but it just wasn't working, but I really, really wanted kids. So it wasn't like a matter of like, oh, why don't you want kids? I do, thanks. And she had a series of miscarriages and a lot of issues. And so I said, oh, I completely understand. And I explained how I didn't, how I felt. And she responded back with like, really? Because you blamed me for my first miscarriage, saying that I was drinking and smoking and things. And I was like, I don't remember doing that at all. I would never blame somebody for a miscarriage. I understand that most miscarriages are, there's like 99% chance it's just genetic issues when it happens. Her first one, however, was a late term one. And I felt horrible that she thought that I was blaming her. I was not blaming her. Now, I have to be careful when I try to explain this because I don't want to blame her for this either. Like, she's every right to feel hurt and upset by what I said. And I would never take that away from her. That's the worst thing anybody could ever go through. I had issues during my pregnancy where I was bleeding a lot, and I had to go to the doctors a few times and find them like, we need to figure something out because clearly something is causing this. Oh, I'm shaking. And turned out I had placenta previa, and so I was put on, and it was the fact that I was doing a lot of physical activity that was causing the bleeding. So I went on limited activity. And that's kind of who I am. Like, if there's a problem, I'll solve it. Check out this. Yeah, sorry. But I don't know if it's because I was raised by guys or if it's just who I am. But, like, I'm the type of person, when there's an issue, I like checklists. Like, what could we have done to prevent this? What could we do to solve this? What could have been the issue that could have created it to make sure it doesn't happen again? And I don't completely remember this conversation I had with her because it was 12 years ago. But the more she kind of, the information she gave, and then the fact that she said it was 12 years ago, and I was like, oh, way back then that happened. Okay, it wasn't just like one of her other miscarriages, which again, it's horrible, and I feel like all I did was say, I'm so sorry every time she told me about them. But I feel like at the time, I was like, oh my God, that's horrible. And then I started my checklist of like, what do you think caused this? Like, was it a genetic defect? I know you were smoking. Or are you still smoking? But I wasn't trying to blame her. I was honestly trying to help. And I know that sounds crazy because, like, there's nothing you can do to help. But in my kind of analytical brain, that's how I figure things out. Like I said, when I was bleeding, my first thought was like, what have I done? What was it? Because like I was 2 months pregnant before I found out I was pregnant. I had drank, I had smoked some pot, I had done some things, and so when I started bleeding, I was like, oh my God, are these things what contributed to this? When they said no, it's fine. And I was like, okay. And then I went back, and then it happened again. And I was like, it's not fine. Like, clearly I'm doing something. Something needs to change. Or if I'm not doing something, we need to figure out what's causing it. And we did. And that's kind of always been the way that I have dealt with everything is, like women always complain about like their husbands do this. Like, I just want to complain. I don't want you to fix it, but I can't. I'm a fixer. I can't help it. I'm a fixer. So normally, if a friend tells me news like that, I normally just, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I've had other friends where I told them, oh my God, I'm so sorry. But this particular friend, I had known for 100 years. We'd known each other since we were toddlers. So it's not like she didn't know my personality. And again, I'm not using that as an excuse, and she's free to feel anything she wants. And I apologize profusely to her for making her feel like I ever blamed her, because that was not my intention. But there's also a certain amount of, because I'm your friend and I love you, I feel like I can run the checklist with you. Like, okay, this happened. It's horrible that it's happened. But if you want to try to have a child again, maybe we should try to figure out steps can be taken to make sure it doesn't happen again. Similar to like when you're in a relationship with an abusive person, it's your friend's job to say, get the fuck away from that person. Like, that's their job. It's not their job to be nice to you. It's their job to help you. And she did smoke a lot and drink a lot, so that was my first thought. And when she said that she'd given up smoking and drinking, and I was like, okay. Now I had another friend who had told me that she was pregnant, and I was like, oh, did you quit smoking? And she's like, well, I've cut back, but my doctor told me that it's not healthy to just quit automatically. And I was like, oh, I get that. No judgment. Just checking. And that's how I felt I was doing with her, was like, did you, like the checklist, did you do this? Did you do this? Is there something that could have contributed? Not blaming, but being aware to fix in the future. Like I said, not something I would do with the average just person I see on the street, which is what the original post was about, was just random people being like, hey, why don't you have kids? Whatever. But something that could be done with someone who's known you your whole life and knows that's the type of person you are. I remember I was at work one time. I don't remember the conversation, but again, I made a comment like that. And my work friend was like, just looked at me. And I was like, what? She's just like, if that came from anyone but you, I would be so offended. But I understand that that's just how your brain works. And I was like, oh my God, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to offend. What about it? How did I offend you? But it's just the way my brain works, that when I see somebody hurting, I want to help and I want to fix it. And I hear women complain all the time about how their husbands do this to them, and it drives them crazy. And I'm like, I don't understand. Why don't you want the problem fixed? I don't understand. It's probably why I got into life coaching and stuff in the first place. In fact, that is kind of what got me into life coaching, because people used to always come to me for advice and joke that I should be a life coach. And then I went through a really hard time, and I went to friends for advice, and they were all very empathetic. And I was like, I don't want your empathy. I don't want your sympathy. I want you to give me advice. I want you to help me. I need to know what I should do. I need that checklist of what ways can I fix my life, because my brain can't figure this out. So I ended up going to a life coach of my own, and she was very helpful. And, we made checklists on different things I could do. And she was always so impressed that she's like, okay, this is your homework for the week. And I was like, okay. And I come back and she's like, were you able to? And I was like, oh yeah, I did this and I did this and I have some ideas. And she's like, wow, I wasn't expecting. I'm like, but this is how I work. It's just sometimes when your brain is a little broken, you can't always think properly. And at that time I was going through a lot. My brain was a little broken. My father was dying. It was a whole bunch of things. So, but yeah, so again, she has every right to feel anything that she wants to feel. And I do not blame her at all. And I did nothing but apologize for making her feel like I blamed her, because that was not my intention. And I'm not even going to put a but in there. I'm just going to follow with, sometimes analytical people like me don't always understand And just like analytical people like me have to learn how to be more empathetic towards situations, empathetic people also need to learn how to understand our analytical minds, because we really, really don't mean to hurt anybody's feelings. And we really, really are just trying to help. And I can honestly see both sides. I can understand why sometimes people just need someone to listen to and why that would hurt to have someone do that. But I also understand that there's a need for systematic responses. Okay, this is what happened. Okay, let's deal with how this happened. Let's figure out what possibly could have contributed to this happening so that we can make sure it doesn't happen again. And I don't think it's good for analytical people to stop being analytical. But I do think we need to work on being more empathetic. Maybe waiting for a different time to bring up the analytical stuff. And again, this was 12 years ago, that apparently this conversation, I feel like I have learned a lot in that 12 years. I've been through a lot in that 12 years. So I feel like I said that to her, I'm like, if I was that person 12 years ago, I am so sorry. That was never my intention, and I am sorry that I hurt you. I made no excuse. I said, I don't remember it, but obviously this is something that you do remember, and that this did hurt you, and that I am sorry. And I think that is the only response that can be said to something like that, because it doesn't matter what my intention was. It matters how she felt about it. Now, as important as I think that is, I think that how people view me has to do with A, my intention, and B, my response to her issues. I don't mean issues like a bad way, but like her feelings towards it. Because I feel like people are way more into now well, you hurt somebody, doesn't matter what your intentions were, which to a certain extent is true. I hurt her. I am sorry. That was not my intention. That does not make me a bad person. It makes me an idiot sometimes, but it does not make me a bad person. So I think, like they say, like there's the introverts and there's extroverts and there's this and there's that. I think that there's a reason why men and women usually get together, and usually that's because one is the empathy who takes care of the babies, and one is the analytical who figures out how to make money and run the household. And that's how it's worked together. Now, I just said I'm the analytical type, so it's not 100% male, female, but that tends to be how it runs, and women get crazy over men not being able to do this. And I remember there was a meme that was out a decade ago that was like, if I said something and there's two ways that that it can be interpreted, it's the one that's not mean, or something like that. And I remember thinking how funny that was. And I shared it with the guy who was now my son's father. He's now passed away. And he laughed because we both had that problem. Like, because I'm analytical, he hated, and he was very emotional. So we were kind of reverse. And so we had those problems that way. And at the time, because I was going through a lot of stuff, sometimes he would say things that would trigger me. We all know that trigger. And I would flip out. So and we both would stop every once in a while when the other person was taking what we said incorrectly, and said, if there's two ways that this could be taken, and the other person would kind of laugh and be like, okay, you're right, I'm sorry. And I think that people have forgotten that other people can be different, and it's okay, and that people can handle things differently, and it's okay. And I have been working really hard on that, because I used to be like, what the hell? I didn't mean anything. What's your problem? But that's not an appropriate way to handle this, because they are allowed to be offended. They are. And I am not a PC person. I think that people get offended over way too much nowadays, but I also think, especially in a situation when you're talking about miscarriages and stuff, people can feel anything they freaking want. I can't even imagine. I have one son. He's the best thing that's ever happened to the planet. And I couldn't even imagine. Actually, I can half imagine because there was those couple times where I had some severe bleeding and I thought, but even then there was that hope. So once the hope's gone, I can't even imagine. But I think that people have to understand that everybody's different and everybody's going to take things differently and everyone's going to express things differently, and that we have to learn to forgive and we have to learn to apologize and we have to learn to come from a place of love, because that's the only way that we can heal all the crap that's going on, and that's the only way that we can survive as human beings, because human beings are social creatures and we need to learn to understand each other socially. And I don't know if it's a new thing. I don't know if it's something that we're growing into. I don't know, but I do know that we need to learn that people are allowed to have different opinions. People are allowed to express themselves differently. People are allowed to have their feelings, and you don't need to fight back about it. You just need to say, if you hurt someone's feelings, I'm sorry, that was not my intention. If someone hurts your feelings and they apologize, thank you, I understand. That's it. I've had my feelings hurt. Everybody's had their feelings hurt. As long as the person's not a dick about it, thank you. So anyways, that's all I wanted to talk about. So if you like what I'm saying, like, subscribe, hit the buttons, do all the stuff down there. And see you later.